Resilience thinking is an evolving concept. We still don't know the answers fully, and so adaptive management is going to be very important. But it's very important to bear in mind that there are no panaceas. There's no simple solutions. Because of the complexity, we have to take a whole lot of things into account. Failure of markets, I won't speak about this in great deal of detail, I can't, but these are all linked. It's the conceptual frameworks, the science, the economics, and there are a number of reforms that need to happen concurrently. Generally, all of the drivers in economic theory are optimisation and efficiency, and we even bring that into our choice of reserve systems, and I think it's actually wrong. We should be looking at it in this way, in terms of dynamic systems, which is actually the very opposite of optimisation and efficiency. And time horizons, we really do have to extend from the very short to the very long and integrate them. Yes, please, the next one. Governance, the third one. Failures of governance to protect biodiversity. This is really thinking about the tragedy of the commons. And it's all about the rules. Here we are, we're living on Earth. We've got to get the rules right. The right rules for the right place and the right time. And there is no universal answer there. If we can go to the next one. Right, that's just summarising that if you think about all of the major ecological catastrophes, I can explain them in terms of these things happening concurrently, that where you've got very strong, strong feedbacks between the economic drivers and the ecological drivers, particularly if you've got tippable ecosystems and you've got poor rules, that's the recipe for catastrophe. Okay, the next one, please. Resilience model, I find this absolutely helpful in being able to bring a whole lot of theories together. Maybe if you have a look at that in terms of the documentation I've circulated rather than me spending time on it, but the overall gist of it is that the resilience of biodiversity, everything on this earth needs basically food, whether it's carbon in one form or another, water, nutrients. The nutrients are the resource supply. That tends to be on a larger scale. This can be at a final scale, and all of those aggregated to a global scale. So productivity is just the ability of biodiversity to grow, to put on biomass and reproduce and so on. So all of these factors have to be thought about. If we can go on to the next one, when you hear about ecological resilience, a lot of these concepts came out of mathematics, but they do make sense. And you think of, I resisted using basins of attraction. It's sort of jargon that I find it's nicer to think in simpler terms, but essentially resilience in ecosystems means that the ability of this is the state of the ecosystem to withstand shocks before it shifts into a new undesirable state. That highly resistant ecosystems have got a high degree of biodiversity. We can characterise the characteristics of ecosystems that give high resilience and those that have low resilience. In other words, that ecosystem is easily tippable into an undesirable state, a collapsed state that may be very hard to recover. You can think about it in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions. So that's a little bit of the theory. And now, resilience criteria, these are some of the things that, if we go very quickly, biodiversity is absolutely fundamental, and it's to do with functional groups in biodiversity. They aren't dispensable, they're insurance mechanisms to ensure that there's something there that allows the ecosystems to be able to respond to disturbance, whatever it is, and basically recover without tipping past that tipping point. Variability, we should be accepting droughts. droughts, floods, etc. as natural parts of the way the earth functions instead of trying to control them with engineering fixes. Every time we've tried to, with levees and channelization, etc., we have major environmental problems. Modularity, that just means different bits that aren't totally connected, so that if one gets lost, the whole lot isn't lost. Slow variables, absolutely important to consider. This is now on multiple scales. It's about the slow change that you don't notice until it's too late. We have to start thinking about recognising the slow changes. For example, the increases in phosphorus and nitrogen in lakes, or those things that when they suddenly they can be very slow changes that you don't notice, but they can produce very large changes in the ecosystem. They're the killers. Tight feedbacks. Stability is based on feedbacks. Positive feedbacks amplify and shift, sort of put ecosystems at risk. Negative feedbacks actually stabilise them. The rest of the things are pretty obvious. So I just want to point out that there are ways of bringing all these scales of social and ecological together, and Elinor Ostrom, who won the Nobel Prize last year in economics, has been working for decades on trying to put frameworks together that will assist governments, anyone who's thinking about managing resources and managing the environmental national parks, to think holistically, to bring the relevant scales from local to higher order, both at the social, economic and ecological levels. And so basically, here's the users using resources. They belong to a system, and there are rules, there's settings, and there are interactions, all those interactions bidirectional, and the outcomes can feed back and have impacts. Now, that's the gist. Everyone knows that, but it's a useful framework. The last thing, which I won't go into the details of, but it's just to say that every one of those points you can delve into in more details. And I would suggest that it is a very useful thing to actually look at a framework that is like a checklist that integrates these things and rely on the sort of work that's being done globally, accumulating data of what type of governance system do you need under certain circumstances of disturbance regimes or the resource type or any one of these parameters. So I think it's a way of sharing information globally to help us locally to deal with decision making in very complex times and situations. So that's just drawing your attention to it. I won't talk about this. This is just saying we can do things in the short term without too much risk, despite uncertainty. And the last one is just saying, look, we need to think differently. We have to shift from that old-style equilibrium way of thinking of things that we think we can analyse simply and predict to resilience thinking. That change won't come about without champions. I'm losing my voice. Without champions or leaders, which is why I think this forum has the capacity to help catalyse critical change slowly, some of it faster than others. You absolutely need money, resources to do it, both in terms of being able to affect the change, and once you've got the change, to be able to manage that change. And there's got to be rule changes, and that's basically it. Thank you very much. Well, to bring about resilience thinking at a government level, yes, I think we need the Commonwealth Government has actually put out a discussion paper of what it thinks resilience means, and it's absolutely hopeless. It's status quo stuff. It's the old style thinking, and they're just simply co-opting a word to make it look as though they're up with the latest, and it won't achieve anything. So I think there does need to be some effort put into refuting that, drawing together support from various scientists. The CSIRO is actually setting up a whole section to do with resilience thinking to assist in ecological management, advice to governments, etc. So Brian Walker is one of the major proponents, and he has been working on resilience thinking together with the National Alliance for quite a long time. So I think there are things happening, we just have to help steer. We're trying to steer the Queensland government into adopting basically a biodiversity resilience strategy rather than, and that's much more explanatory. So in terms of resilience thinking, there are some concrete things that can be achieved.